The violin is 1/16 regular size. Its owner, about 1/2 regular size, though that's only one of the remarkable things about him. We knew him first as Little Lou, a Vietnamese orphan in Saigon.
4.5 years ago, I would have to work for my room and board, but now I don't have to go out there and sell newspaper, lottery ticket no more, and stuff like that. I think it's now I'm fortunate to have a family to go to.
In April 1975, just before the North Vietnamese victory, Saigon was full of desperate people trying to get out. One of them was Nguyen Van Lưu. At the CBS bureau in Saigon on the day that Lou appeared and handed me a letter, I reached into my pocket to give him a tip. He waved it away, saying, "Please read this note." It was an introduction to this streetwise kid whose story we then told in this report in April 1975. Lou was born near Da Nang. He says that in 1969, an American bomb killed his parents. So, from age 7, he caged a living in the streets of Da Nang, selling lottery tickets and newspapers, learning English from friendly GIs, and learning life in the streets, barracks, and bars. When the Americans left 2 years ago, Lou came to Saigon on his own. He still has a lot of American friends, like Joe Meyer and Carl Wright. They help him out. Others give him a place to stay. But Lou knows, or he fears, that they may be leaving soon. And he is afraid he will die if the communists take over, because though he is Vietnamese, he looks to be part Indian. And he says he has heard that the VC do not like children of mixed blood. So Lou is determined to get himself to America. Lou, why do you want to leave Saigon?
Because I don't want to stay in the country where they have war, fighting.
Are you afraid that the war will come to Saigon?
Yes, I am.
The other day, Lou, after telephoning for an appointment, went to see a consultant at Holt Children's Services. They didn't want the interview filmed, but we were present. Lou pressed his own case, and he was told that Holt would try to help him get out. So now he waits. Because Lou is so articulate, the consultant at Holt asked him to write a story about himself. This is how it begins. I am going to tell you about my life. My full name is Nguyen Van Lưu. I am about 3 feet tall, and I am a dwarf. And I am orphaned by an American warplane. And if you want to know what I want a home in America and love.
We saw you interviewing Lou in Saigon.
Was there
I was standing right over there behind the love seat, and I saw the shot on TV, and I hollered for the kids. I said, "Come quick, here's your new brothers on TV."
Leif and Laura Arestad had one child, and when they found they could have no more, they began adopting. The 15 children they took to themselves had been born to American, Korean, Filipino, and American Indian parents. Like Lou, some of the others were victims of war. So it was perhaps not surprising that they wanted Lou.
You asked him what he planned on doing, and he said he was going to go to Holt. And perhaps somebody there would love him and adopt him. And he just fit right in that slot I had in my heart there for that other child, and it didn't come that easy.
Well, it wasn't easy, but Lou made it from the teeming streets of Saigon to this dairy farm in Ferndale, Washington, tucked away in the remote northwest corner of the nation 100 miles from Seattle. And the contrast between his life in the streets and his life here could hardly be greater. He is Robert Luke Arestad now, American teenager.
Wait my 13th birthday, but she is far from happy.
Lou is about 17 now and in the 8th grade at the Vista Middle School in Ferndale.
When he first came, because of his size and his previous life, he would give in to anything that anybody wanted. You know, he'd do or say anything anybody wanted because he was fearful, you know, that somebody's going to take advantage of him, and they had, and now he stands up for himself. There's nobody steps on the...
You guys want to flip them?
They talk at school about how well he has adjusted and how he gets along with everyone. He always did get along. Growing up different around soldiers in a war zone gave him a sure instinct for survival. But the fear and suspicion which were just below the surface 4.5 years ago in Saigon have vanished, given way to a sense of security and self-confidence. And that, everyone agrees, probably has everything to do with the family of which Lou is now a member.
I don't say we had an abundance. We had plenty. We always had something to eat. But some of these kids that we had never got enough to eat. No security of any kind. And by giving them a little hope, which I think all kids should have, you see that the Lord gave us a great hope. And to bottle that up and not help anybody else is pretty selfish.
Well, I just thank the Lord for that. If there's any credit to be given, give it to Him. But we do love the children. They're our children, and we try to impart that love to them, that they show it one to another, and they really do love one another.
We shall have them!
200 years ago today in Lexington, Massachusetts, a shot was fired. It's not known precisely who fired it, but that shot touched off a volley by British redcoats, killing 8 American colonials. It was the beginning of the American Revolution.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Weekend News with Dan Rather and David Culhane in Concord, Massachusetts, Bob Schieffer in Lexington, Massachusetts, Ike Pappas in Washington, Bob Simon is Quan Loc, South Vietnam, Bill Plant in Saigon, Bernard Goldberg in Jackson, Tennessee, and Haywood Hale Broun in Boston, Massachusetts.
Good evening. Reenactments marking the beginning of the American Revolution were held today throughout the country in states which didn't even exist as such 200 years ago. But the biggest staging was held where it all began. David Culhane starts his report in Lexington, Massachusetts.
Regular British troops had been sent from Boston to find and seize arms being stored by the colonists. But the Americans were ready to go to war over the issue of taxation without representation. So when the Redcoats reached Lexington, a skirmish broke out on the green. The scene was reenacted at dawn today. 200 years ago, 7 Lexington men were killed, along with 1 man from nearby Woburn. 9 Minutemen and 2 British soldiers were wounded. The actual engagement only lasted a few minutes. The enthusiastic bicentennial reenactment took a bit longer. Some 35,000 people arrived at daybreak to watch the ceremony, considerably less than expected. The The lower turnout was probably due in equal parts to rainy weather and warnings from officials about the expected crush of tourists.
This land is yours, this land is mine.
And a very different way of celebrating the bicentennial. 3:30 in the morning, the singer Pete Seeger. The occasion, a massive festival of politics, wine, and song. The place, a hillside near the Old North Bridge at Concord. Officials estimated 20 to 40,000, mostly young people, at this celebration sponsored by the People's Bicentennial Commission. It appeared to be an amalgam of the old Woodstock and anti-war crowds, but a new theme, a charge that big business today is just about as bad as the monarchy in 1776. In spite of drenching rains, most of the partygoers were still there at dawn. A little later at the Old North Bridge, another reenactment. This time, Dr. Samuel Prescott, a lesser-known compatriot of Paul Revere, tries to get through the crowd to warn the American farmers that the Redcoats are coming. More noise and excitement, and then on with the basic Revolutionary War parade. Police did have a confrontation with some youths from the People's Bicentennial Commission celebration. Police said the youths were threatening to disrupt the ceremonies and the parade. They beat them back with billy clubs. But these demonstrators were far outnumbered by the estimated 175,000 people in the Lexington-Concord area who just wanted to celebrate peacefully. David Culhane, CBS News, Concord.
Some of the demonstrators in Concord booed the speech of another out-of-town visitor, President Ford, but he encountered a very friendly crowd at the next stop. Bob Schieffer reports on the president's appearances.
It was the road where the Minutemen had faced the Redcoats 200 years ago at Concord, but today, as the American president arrived, the Redcoats offered no resistance. The trouble was across the river, where the anti-establishment protesters had gathered. Some of Mr. Ford's advisors had urged him to pass up Concord, fearing the protests and a breakdown in security. But the president wanted very much to take part in this ceremony and went ahead with his prepared speech. The demonstrators booed and chanted most of the way, even when the president spoke of the need for putting a healing hand on the heart of America.
Reasonable societies and reasonable people must do all in their power to reconcile all threats to peace. Now is a time for reconciliation, not recrimination. It is a time of reconstruction, not rancor.
The president could hardly ignore the noise, but he made no mention of it. He did not see what was happening behind him as some of the protesters tried to cross the river and police set off in slippery pursuit. The closest any of them got was about 100 yards from where the president stood. A half hour later in Lexington, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time, and the crowds there were entirely friendly. Mr. Ford laid a wreath at the statue of the American Minuteman, and he expressed hope that the bicentennial would begin a new century of unity and progress. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Lexington, Massachusetts.
Some want a home in the valley, some want a house on a hill. Savings and loans lend the money to buy. They build your money as well. Put your money where it builds. At your savings and loan. Put your money where it builds. America. At your savings and loan.
How do you spell relief?
When I get acid indigestion, I spell relief. R-O-L-A-I-D-S.
For gas, I spell it R-O-L-A-I-D-S.
Rolaids spells relief. In this test with Rolaids active ingredient, laboratory acid changes color to prove Rolaids consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid. How do you spell relief?
For heartburn, I know. R-O-L-A-I-D-S.
Rolaids spells relief.
The Khmer Rouge military and political forces broadcast a report from Phnom Penh today saying that several of Cambodia's deposed leaders have been beheaded. No names have been given. One refugee arriving in Thailand says the Khmer Rouge executed 43 soldiers after taking over one provincial town and after the white flags of surrender had been raised. Today, the Khmer Rouge took control of the province surrounding Cambodia's second largest city, Battambang. That city itself fell 2 days ago. There is still some resistance to the communist victors in several other provinces, but no fighting has been reported today. In Peking, 10,000 people attended a rally celebrating the Khmer Rouge victory in Cambodia, but the guest of honor, Prince Norodom Sihamoni, did not show up, and there's been no explanation. 3 more U.S. aircraft carriers assigned to the Vietnam area, the Midway, the Hancock, and the Okinawa, have left port along with support craft. Ike Pappas has more on that story from Washington.
Officially, the Pentagon will not reveal exactly where the carriers are heading, but sources indicated they will join the nuclear aircraft carrier Enterprise and the Coral Sea in international waters off the South Vietnamese coast to stand by for evacuation orders. The United States has a total of 5 aircraft carriers, 4 amphibious ships, and several merchant vessels earmarked for evacuation duty. For the first time since the evacuations from Indochina began, all are either in South Vietnamese waters or said to be heading there at the fastest possible pace. The Hancock and the Okinawa are carrying long-range helicopters. There are some 4,000 Marines on the amphibious ships to be used in the event an evacuation, such as the one last week in Phnom Penh, has to be carried out. The Pentagon says that up to 30,000 Marines in reserve on the island of Okinawa can be called up if necessary. The likelihood of Marines going in to protect Americans being evacuated is growing daily. Ike Pappas, CBS News, Washington.
In Saigon today, the Viet Cong told a news conference its forces would not interfere with the evacuation of Americans from the capital, but the Viet Cong said there would be no such guarantee for safety of any Vietnamese nationals who try to leave with the Americans. South Vietnam, apparently anticipating a major attack on its Bien Hoa air base, has pulled its F-5 fighter bomber fleet out of there, basing the planes now closer to Saigon. Bien Hoa was rocketed and shelled again today. There was more fighting, too, in Long An province, the gateway linking the Mekong Delta's rice supplies with the 3 million people in Saigon depending on those supplies. For more than a week, the major battle in Vietnam has been around Xuan Loc, 38 miles east of Saigon. Bob Simon reports on the action there.
F-5 fighter bombers were providing close air support along Route 1 today, closer than it has been before because the North Vietnamese have advanced their positions. Up until now, it is these airstrikes which have permitted government troops to hold on to Xuan Loc and to their positions along Route 1. For the first time last night, the communists entered this village, which had been held by South Vietnamese Rangers. It had been the last government outpost on the way to Xuan Loc, 5 miles from the embattled city. Today, the Rangers were trying to push the communists out again. For the first time, the sounds of incoming and outgoing artillery were joined by the rattle of machine gun and small arms fire. But the real question is not artillery or air support, but numbers of troops available. The government is moving at least part of a Marine brigade into the Xuan Loc area. These men are part of the Marine Division, which was evacuated from Quang Tri last month. They've been regrouped, re-equipped during the last 10 days. They're taking with them brand new artillery pieces, guns which will be firing for the first time. But military sources say the North Vietnamese now have at least 10 divisions converging on the Saigon area, an area which is being defended by 4 government divisions. Numbers, time, and now perhaps firepower as well, are all working for the North Vietnamese. Bob Simon, CBS News, Route 1.
With all of Saigon waiting now for what some believe will be certain disaster, many people, young and old, cling to the hope that somehow they can escape the city in time. Bill Plant has the story of just one of them.
Nguyen Van Leeuw is a 12-year-old orphan and a dwarf, and he is one of the most determined survivors of a war far older than he. Right now, what little Lou wants more than anything else is to get out of Vietnam to America. And, typically, he is fending for himself, with a little help from his friends. Lou was born near Da Nang. He says that in 1969, an American bomb killed his parents. So, from age 7, he caged a living in the streets of Da Nang, selling lottery tickets and newspapers, learning English from friendly GIs, and learning life in the streets, barracks, and bars. When the Americans left 2 years ago, Lou came to Saigon on his own. He still has a lot of American friends, like Joe Meyer and Carl Wright. They help him out. Others give him a place to stay. But Lou knows, or he fears, that they may be leaving soon. And he is afraid he will die if the communists take over, because though he is Vietnamese, he looks to be part Indian. And he says he has heard that the VC do not like children of mixed blood. So Lou is determined to get himself to America.
Lou, why do you want to leave Saigon?
Because I don't want to stay in the country where they have war, fighting.
Are you afraid that the war will come to Saigon?
Yes, I am.
The other day, Lou, after telephoning for an appointment, went to see a consultant at Holt Children's Services. They didn't want the interview filmed, but we were present. Lou pressed his own case, and he was told that Holt would try to help him get out. So now he waits. Because Lou is so articulate, the consultant at Holt asked him to write a story about himself. This is how it begins. I am going to tell you about my life. My full name is Nguyen Van Loo. I am about 3 feet tall, and I am a dwarf. And I am orphaned by an American warplane. And if you want to know what I want a home in America and love. Bill Plant, CBS News, Saigon.
India today orbited this 800-pound research satellite, becoming the first so-called developing nation to enter the space age. The launching site was somewhere in the Soviet Union, and a Soviet rocket hurled the instrument into space. 11 months ago, you may recall, India became a nuclear power when it conducted an underground atomic test. At Cologne, Germany today, a Dutch cruise ship caught fire and sank at its dock in the Rhine River. 19 persons are feared dead. Most of the more than 100 passengers were aged and crippled. A spokesman for the ship's owner says the vessel was inspected just last Wednesday and found to be, quote, totally okay.
This is the end of denture cream. Because now there's a new kind of denture cream. A denture cream that doesn't just get rid of the dingy yellow film that builds up on dentures. This denture cream has a new anti-yellowing formula. A new anti-yellowing formula that polishes better. Better than ever to help keep that yellow from coming back. Announcing new denture cream with a new anti-yellowing formula.
The Jaguar XJ is neither all performance nor all luxury. During its design and development, Jaguar gave no absolute veto power to either stylist or engineer. For the Jaguar is a complete motor car, one that performs its function as a road car with agility and stamina, yet offers its owners those elusive qualities of grace, dignity, and exclusivity.
Prisoners in the District of Columbia Jail's maximum security cell block now have released all 12 of the jail employees they'd taken hostage earlier today. The uprising began with the escape of 2 inmates. The dissident prisoners were demanding better treatment and the right to meet with reporters twice a month. It isn't immediately known what demands, if any, the prisoners won. A series of tornadoes along with high winds and torrential rain swept across parts of the Midwest and the South last night. 2 people are known to have been killed, at least another 90 injured. The most destructive tornado hit Jackson, Tennessee. Bernard Goldberg reports.
It happened about midnight, a tornado tearing into a trailer court, tossing mobile homes about as if they were toys. 12 of 84 homes were left standing. Today, people who used to live here were salvaging what they could. People like Alice Burdett Jr., who lost his home when the storm ripped it from its foundations.
Well, it just rolled you around, you know, all just down, throw you out. Kids were scattered down through here.
Last month, a tornado struck the fringes of this trailer park, damaging far fewer homes. This time, it was a direct hit.
I was inside. I heard the little boy holler, and I knew he was alive. I didn't know if he was hurt or not. I crawled through there and got him out and went around to the other end of the trailer and checked and made sure my wife was all right. Everybody's in pretty good shape.
The tornado also ripped roofs off a nearby apartment building. A woman was killed here, the only known fatality. No one was killed in this trailer park. In all, 55 persons were injured in Jackson. Hundreds are homeless. Bernard Goldberg, CBS News, Jackson, Tennessee.
At the Wood Memorial, a major test for 3-year-olds, Foolish Pleasure was favored to win easily, but when he made his move down the stretch as the second horse from the rail, he found himself in a horse race with the less glorified Bombay Duck. and it stayed a race right down to the wire. But Foolish Pleasure pulled out the victory to remain the hottest prospect to win next month's Kentucky Derby. Yesterday, it was reported that some of the world's 49 known wild whooping cranes might be in danger. A spring rest stop in Nebraska is infected with bird cholera, and despite attempts to scare them off, 9 of the cranes had landed in that danger area. But today, an official with the state's Game and Parks Commission says the cranes have left, heading for Canada, apparently with no signs of the disease.
You're not seeing double. They're identical twins. Both want soft skin. Jean uses liquid bath oil. Jane, Calgon bath oil beads with a special moisturizer. Lets pat dry. Any difference?
No difference in softness.
But what's left on your skin? Liquid left more oiliness than Calgon.
I do feel slippery. I just feel soft. Can I borrow your Calgon?
Calgon bath oil beads. Soft as liquid, not as slippery.
Benjamin Moore has its reasons for making a paint like Regal Aqua Velvet. You just saw 3 of them. 4. Aqua Velvet's childproof because it covers walls and trim with a beautiful soft finish you can clean as easily as a gloss enamel. Aqua Velvet, Benjamin Moore's best. Your walls keep that beautiful soft finish, even with children.
See your Benjamin Moore dealer. He offers you more.
The excitement of the nation's bicentennial celebrations is activating commercial operators who smell profit in the souvenirs and decorations that go with any celebration. Haywood Hale Broun talked about the real meaning of this 200th birthday anniversary with a Boston historian.
Insofar as it presents the actual words, and not always the well-known ones of the participants, and not always the well-known participants as far as that's concerned, it will indeed deepen our understandings. But we can only hope we're not deluged with the decorations.
The speaker is Lyman Butterfield, who for 20 years, largely in this building, has immersed himself in the early years of the Republic, feeling for its flavor in the numerous papers of the Adams family. He meets his shadow friends across a desk in a round-towered study. The power-wielding Adamses, President John Quincy, and Ambassador Charles Francis, wrote the letters which now fill Butterfield's days in the way executives make phone calls, without hesitation and without stint of words. All their relatives also contributed to the trunks full of carefully covered paper, which Adams has sent from all parts of the world to safe haven in the family's bank. So far, 20 volumes of thought, philosophy, history, instruction, and family chat have been issued.
I think very little of it is drudgery. It is a kind of revelation. It's a kind of unfolding of what was always there but not available to a general public. In some ways, it's almost a priestly craft.
This spring, as the bicentennial starts reviewing its lineup, the Boston State House unveiled a plaque to our second president, and Butterfield emerged from the cloister to participate as a literary relative.
Do you sometimes feel that you have become a part of the family, that you know them better?
Very much so, very much so. I maintain in any case that an editor today, I think an editor at any time, has to have a kind of empathy with his subject. In order to feel the things the way they felt them, you have to get into their shoes.
The solid Adams home in Quincy, Massachusetts, suggests the settled respectability from which the family had sprung and to which it clung. Here, John's wife, Abigail, contributed largely to the mass of preserved correspondence, making full use of the free postage, which was then the only reward the nation gave its ex-presidents. In the stacks of the Massachusetts Historical Society, 300,000 pieces of paper can be built into a kind of verbal sculpture, a figure group of an extraordinary family in a now misty world. The elements range from presidential proclamations to a miscellaneous bunch of scraps, which John Quincy Adams gave the forthright name of rubbish, paradoxically stamped on the backs of fine leather bindings.
I suppose I have to ask you the classic questions always asked of museum curators.